We are going to call to order the work session for July 18th. Are there any new employees present? I don't see any. How about identifying future work meeting topics? Tim, you were going to remember one.
I've got one if Tim's trying to think.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I was reminded that it has been a year since we have had an update with the food service contract for the correctional facility. Maybe sometime in the future we can receive that update.
Excellent. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. We need to review and I think pass a resolution of support for the JASB, the revised zoning for the airport. And all the government agencies, the local government agencies need to go through and do that are affected by it. And so I would like to get that on our next agenda. And already alerted Tom to it, but so want to make sure that we get that addressed here at our August 1st meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Just as a point of clarification, Commissioner Gosvig, is that a resolution that the airport board is going to be drafting up and sending out, or is it something that we need to develop ourselves?
Yeah, thank you. I can verify that and get with Karen Weller and see it. I believe we probably do have something that we can provide for that, but I'll verify that and get back to you.
I would think that would be the protocol because there's other governmental bodies that are going to have to do that. Okay, any others? All right, let's move on to MCIT annual member report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good afternoon.
My name is Eric Nearness. I'm MCIT's Director of Claims, and on behalf of MCIT, I'd like to thank you for having us up this afternoon. We try and get out to counties every other year and give you an update about MCIT, its operations, successes and challenges, so that we can continue to work together. We are a joint risk pool entity, and we are basically owned by members such as yourself. We cover 81 of Minnesota's 86 counties, or 87 for property and casualty claims, and we cover 80 counties of the 87 for workers' compensation. Beltrami County has been with the trust since 1981, so you're one of our earliest members. And thank you for that tenure, and thank you for all that you do to work with us. I think we have a very good relationship with Beltrami County. Your employees, your staff, your leadership team is responsive and helpful when we have claims or when we have issues that need to be addressed. The cooperation there has been great. I want to go over a couple of high points. I believe Linda informed me that you do have this little handout.
Yes.
In case you want it. A couple of things to note. We have the Employee Assistance Program. Some of you may be familiar with that. We offer that program to employees through Sand Creek. So if an employee is experiencing psychological or emotional distress or trouble, they have a confidential resource that they can access at absolutely no cost. And that can be up to 6 visits or sessions with representatives of Sand Creek. One thing people don't often know as well is that Sand Creek does more than offer that type of counseling. They can also assist employees with finding daycare, childcare, adult daycare, financial assistance, and other programs. So if you have an employee that is worried, distracted, or otherwise is looking for help, don't be afraid to have them call the EAP program, and we'll see if there's something we can do for them. Beltrami County's utilization in 2021, about 5.57% of your workforce utilized the EAP program. That was down just slightly in 2022, where it went down to about 4.83%. And that's typically what we see for county members and other members. It runs between about 4 and 6%. Sadly, we know that sometimes there are significant and tragic events that happen in county operations. we'll see the EAP utilization spike in those situations, but that's why we're there. And we're glad to be able to offer that resource to employees. Just a reminder, your loss control consultant is Nick Lindberg and your risk management consultant is Tom Suppis. If you ever need assistance getting in touch with any of those people, I'm sure Linda can help. While she's here. I was just commiserating with her because I'm actually 10 days from my retirement. And my wife earlier this year said that with both daughters and a grandson in Texas now, she intends to spend much more time in Texas and was hopeful I could join her. So I don't have to be hit over the head twice. I got that message. Couple other things I wanted to talk about. We had a good year getting reinsurance. We saw that our reinsurance rate increased about 8% overall for property casualty and workers' compensation. But as you can see in the second page, the rates anticipate expenses box on the lower right. Your property casualty premium only went up about 1.9%, and the workers' compensation premium actually went down 10.9%. One of the odd effects of the COVID pandemic was we had a lot of employees who were working remotely. They weren't slipping and falling coming into or out of the office building, less employees on the road and vehicles because they were doing more virtual appointments, which really helped bring down our claims frequency. For those of you that were here last year, you may remember that the Workers' Compensation Reinsurance Association gave a dividend to MCIT of $11 million. That was the result of good performance in our claims administration and claims management, and also cost control measures that we've adopted. Of that 11 million, we've returned about 9.6 million to members, and Beltrami County's share of that dividend, as you can see in the yellow box on page 2, was $89,015. So benefit of membership that we are able to return surplus when we have it, unlike insurance companies who return surplus to shareholders. If you look at the third page, we have some data about where the claims are coming from. This information is specific to all counties. It is not specific to Beltrami County. But by frequency, and when we use the term frequency, that just means number of claims. So about 48% of our claims come out of the sheriff's office and jail operations, not surprising. About 11% out of highway, and then hospital, nursing home, public health makes up about 10%. By severity, and by severity, we mean how much do we pay on claims? We see that the jail operations are also about 48% of the property casualty claims payments we make. Those are typically liability claims. They are claims involving alleged civil rights violations, injury, excessive force, things that are normal for law enforcement operations in jails. Highway accounted for about 7.6 million, so a little bit higher severity than frequency. But again, not surprising, your folks are out in work zones, they're moving equipment, people take tumbles in ditches, there's unfortunately equipment accidents and tool accidents. Those can sometimes be a little bit bigger lost time claim with slightly higher medical expense. And then again, hospital, nursing home, these tend to be lower severity, and honestly, most of it is sprain strain for your staffs that are helping patients lift, relocate, transfer beds, and so forth. Looking at property casualty claims, top 3 by line, auto, not surprisingly, is the highest frequency. Our deputies do a magnificent job of hitting deer, turkeys, raccoons, owls, the occasional bovine. And property accounts for about 16% of claims, and then general liability is 13%. And again, by severity, we pay about 32% of claims dollars for auto. Most of it is low severity hits. Sometimes if they really wipe out the grill guard on an Interceptor, we've got some specialty equipment that may drive the price up a little bit. Property is about 31% of our claims. The vast majority of that is weather related. It's typically wind and hail. And that is driven about 60% by roofing. And most of the roofing is a petroleum product. So as goes the price of oil, so goes the price of roofing. And then law enforcement liability, there you can see the distinction where it's only 13% of the claims that arise. It results in about 20% of the claims payments that are made, particularly in the public employee liability and law enforcement liability categories. Those claims are very expensive to defend. They are very time consuming. But again, your staff is excellent to work with. They're very cooperative and will help us with information requests, meeting requests, preparation for depositions, hearings, trials when it's necessary. So we're very happy about that. One area of opportunity as we look on the third page, you can see that the workers' compensation claims have associated with them what is affectionately known to us as a mod rate. What it actually is, it's a modification rate that is imposed by a formula. And we typically expect that a mod rate of 1.0 would be about normal for what we expect in development in claims frequency, claims severity. Unfortunately, Beltrami's county right now is at 1.352. A little bit higher than average number of claims, a couple of claims with a little bit higher average severity than some of the other counties. And if you look at the recent mod factors in 2019, Beltrami was at 0.91%. Anything below 1 is excellent, but as you can see the trend through 2020, 21, 22, it's creeping upward. So again, this might be an opportunity for your safety committee, your human resources team and others to say, how and where are those avoidable accidents or avoidable injuries occurring, and what can we do to better promote employee awareness and employee safety? One of the big things that happened in 2022, for those of you again who were here last summer, we were told by the Hartford Steam Boiler that they were no longer going to write reinsurance for our cyber coverage. That was not unique to MCIT. Hartford Steam Boiler just realized they didn't know enough about public entities and municipal entities and the wide and varied things that go on in our counties. And they just really didn't have a pricing model. And so they kind of told all municipal entities, sorry, we're getting out. Fortunately, County Reinsurance Limited, our reinsurer for liability claims, has a cyber program. And early last fall, our executive director and deputy executive director came to me and said, Eric, can we handle cyber claims in-house? And having been in the business world for about 40 years, I thought for a second and I looked back and I said, yes, we can. So we put together our cyber claims program and our cyber coverage program late in 2022. I'm very pleased to tell you it's actually better coverage than Hartford Steam Boiler was able to offer. We have higher limits. We have more flexibility in applying those limits. Hartford Steam Boiler had what can only be described as some sub limits. So you might think you had 250,000 in coverage, but actually only 125,000 was available for coverage. 125,000 was available for legal or defense costs. We can actually move that slider depending on the type of claim to make sure that members get the maximum benefit of the coverage. And then on the last page, one of the things that we really try to do is continue to promote, educate, and help you train your employees and supervisors. We have lots of advice and services. We have a brand new redesigned website. One of the features on that new website is a link to a group called eRisk Hub. It is actually a cybersecurity resource. There you can find model policies, model programs, model tabletop exercises, things that you can go through so that in the event a cyber event actually occurs, you've rehearsed that once or twice. And it's not brand new. The other nice thing about our cyber coverage is part of that benefit is if there is a cyber claim, we get a free 30-minute consultation with an attorney breach coach so that we can determine exactly what we're dealing with, and we can do that almost immediately before we start taking any kind of action. Listening to some speakers last year, I thought it was really interesting. They said, you know, when you've had a cyber breach, it's really a crime scene. So before you start walking all over the crime scene and trying to unplug things and plug things back in and restore things, let's find out exactly what we're dealing with. Ounce of prevention, pound of cure. We do have trainings throughout the year. We did have a cyber workshop back in March. We've got HR trainings this summer. There'll be more fall workshops for your supervisors, employees, and yourselves. And we just encourage you to continue to learn about MCIT. One of the things that we can help with is if you are considering entering into contracts, amending a contract, going out for bid. Our risk management consultants, in this instance, Tom Suppis, will happily review a contract with you to make sure that from our standpoint and a coverage standpoint, that there is not a gap or that you are not in some way creating a potential risk for yourself in that contract. So that's a service we have available. So I know you've got a full session this afternoon. I want to be brief as I could, but are there any questions I can answer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Eric, for the update. Wondering, a lot of the cyber insurance, not a lot, but some of what that I'm experienced with, they have such stringent requirements that they practically make it almost impossible for you to end up having a cyber event. So then they're covering their butts to not have to ever pay out. Just wondering, you know, where MCIT fits in that realm as far as, you know, how much we're getting charged for the cyber insurance and what we're being required to provide for, you know, all the different facets that you can possibly do to have enhanced cybersecurity for our organization.
Right. So for 2023, there was not a separate premium charge or contribution charge for the cyber coverage. We just rolled that in with the property casualty. I don't know in all candor what's going to happen over the coming years. I will tell you across the industry, both private and public sectors, cyber insurance is getting more and more difficult to obtain. And when you can find it, it is more expensive. And as you say, it can have limitations in coverage. I always kind of looked at cyber coverage the way I look at a mortgage. The only time the bank will lend you money is when you don't need it. And so they will sometimes be very stringent. The only thing that is a main concern for me, and we bang the drum with your leadership and employees on this all the time, the cyber event has to be reported within 60 days of when you receive notice that an event has occurred. If that event comes in on day 61, we are not able to offer any coverage, and CRL will not offer any reinsurance. So it's not 60 days from the actual event, because sometimes people get into systems, they're exceptionally good at hiding what they've done and where they've been, and it may be months. I think we have one right now where it wasn't discovered till 8.5 months after the event. But we were notified within 90 minutes of when it was discovered. So we were able to step in and offer coverage, and we're working through that claim.
Mr. Chair, I had one other question. A lot of cyber issues stem from staff, employees clicking on the wrong thing, or that type of going to the wrong website, that kind of stuff. And do we have any availability for things like Arctic Wolf awareness training, little videos that we can have our IT department put out? Do you offer anything like that? Or
Yes, if you go to the e-risk hub on the website, I think in our most recent bulletin, there is an activation code. So any employee or member of Beltrami County can go on there and access. They have 8 and 10-minute training videos. And you're exactly right. Phishing, spyware, malware. If Eric ruled the world, I would get rid of autofill in the address line, because I want to send something to Jen Olson and I start typing Jen, and then Jen Johnson comes up. So I've just sent confidential information about a human services client to a non-employee or a non-participant in that claim. And that's really where we see most of the claims. It is predominantly Government Data Practice Act mistakes or sending information to the wrong person or sending out the wrong information. That probably accounts for between 80 and 85% of the claims, and I would say probably 50 to 70% of it is just human error. We also are working with AMC and the Cybersecurity Task Force. I know that AMC will be rolling out programs and recommendations this fall, probably around the October timeframe. And I know that one of the speakers at the AMC annual conference in December is going to be a person who's a cybersecurity expert. He was able to attend our March training in person and presented. He showed me things that made my eyes roll back in my head. I mean, he in a few minutes could have figured out how to open my garage door at my house in LaPorte from St. Paul. So he's got really good information. And I think with some of the things that we're going to be doing with eRisk Hub and in participation with AMC, you'll probably see some pretty startling things if you attend the conference in December, but you're also going to see some good answers and strategies about what to do about it. But in presentations that I've given over the last couple of years, one of my favorite slides is you've got what looks like a boxing ring, and in this corner you've got technology, firewalls, software, encryption, passwords, protections, and in this corner you've got Dave. And Dave will defeat your technology at every opportunity given the chance. So yeah, we're very much aware of that, and this is a priority. I see it if Eric's forecast, probably within 3, 5, 7 years, cyber coverage will be very, very difficult to obtain and is really going to be incumbent upon organizations to have the right training and the right equipment. I will tell you, when I presented to Min Kitla last September, that's the Minnesota Council of IT Leadership. One thing that they impressed upon me, and I'm not poking anybody in the eye, just give me some feedback. Sometimes when they come to a board such as yourself and ask for something, a very natural question is to say, okay, well, what's the benefit? What's the ROI? What's my return? It is really becoming a part of your operation, just like 4-inch mill and overlay is. It's not something that you choose to do, it's something that you need to do. And hopefully we'll have some good recommendations on that. One of the things that I was pushing the cyber task force to look at was our purchasing cooperatives. Can we get some discount pricing for bulk licenses or higher volume of services? One of the things we use is a email phishing tool. It's called KnowBe4, and you'll get these fake emails, and when you correctly report it for phishing, you get a nice packet on the back. And when you don't report it for phishing, it gives you a little pop-up and says, these are the things you should have been looking for. So real-time feedback. Those are becoming more and more prevalent. Probably the other good thing that you could do would be consider making an investment and having an expert come in and do a penetration test on your system. They will play the role of hacker, and they will find out how easy or difficult it is to get into your system.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate
All right.
that.
Thank you very much for your time and attention today.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, just,
Oh, yes.
I'm guessing that MCIT would be for our property casualty and liability insurance, much the same as our Prime West, that as part of a cooperative, we have probably less major fluctuations in our rate as opposed to being with a Hartford or a Western National or whatever. Notwithstanding the mod rates, because the mod rates obviously are going to be specific to every county, is going to have ups and downs, but
Yeah.
Have you seen that our rates typically are pretty level?
Actually, until about 2 or 3 years ago, when the economy started really heating up again, we saw our property casualty rates coming down. It's ticked up a little bit right now, but that's part due to inflation, material costs, and labor costs associated with property repairs. Automobiles are becoming more expensive just because you used to be able to take a bumper off a key and put a new one on for $600. Well, now they've got electronic sensors all around the perimeter. So what was $600 is now $1,900. But yes, I can say with a high degree of confidence, we are much more stable in our rates. We have 7 commissioners and 2 auditors on our board, and they go through budget cycles every year, and we hate surprises. So we try and keep that as level and as predictable and as forecasted as we can for members. For myself, I was in private practice as a lawyer for 15 years. I represented financial services and insurers. Then I worked at USAA for 17 years, both in the Office of General Counsel and in the Property Casualty Group as a claims executive. And now 5 more years with MCIT, both as a board member and as a director of claims. So I've seen a bit, and I think we do a pretty dang good job of controlling those rates.
Thank you for coming tonight and, very much probably.
All right, very good. Thank you again, everyone. What's that? I don't do good with heat. I'm ice fishing and snowmobiling. It's much better.
And you ready with the Prime West Community Reinvestment Fund?
I am. Good afternoon, commissioners, and thank you for having me. I'm becoming a regular here.
That's good.
Yeah. So I'm here about the Prime West Community Investment Grants. Prime West had a surplus and they wanted to reinvest those dollars into their 24 member counties. There's a total of $5 million in the surplus that's being reinvested in 2 different grant programs. Many of you probably got some emails about these Prime West reinvestment grants. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of information on what the difference is between the 2. The first $2.5 million is being reinvested into the 24 counties through a county allocation grant process. So there's a base amount of $75,000 that is provided to all of the 24 Prime West member counties. And then the remaining amount that is of that $2.5 million is then divided up on a percentage of how many Prime West members each of those 24 counties has. So that's $2.5 million of the $5 million, and Beltrami County's county allocation amount is $203,824. The other $2.5 million in grant dollars is available to the 24 counties, but to any agency in those counties that serves Prime West members. So the specific county allocation is to Health and Human Service entities, that $203,000. But the other $2.5 million can be any social service agency. So it could be FASC, it could be Sanford Health, any entity that's serving Prime West members. And that is through a competitive grant process. And applications for those funds are due 8/21 of 23. So there are 2 very specific ways that they've allocated back those reinvestment dollars. So with the county allocation portion, Health and Human Services looked at, okay, what are the needs of the people we serve and what are the needs of the agency? And we determined 4 ways that the county allocation grant could best be utilized to positively impact Prime West members. So the first way is we would like to maintain the additional staff that we're hiring on through the use of our Medicaid unwinding funds. And we'd like to keep them on for an additional 6 months. So if you recall, Kurt Anderson, our economic assistance director, was here, a month and a half ago, maybe, and talked with you all about the workload and the resources needed resulting from the MA unwinding process. And when I say MA unwinding process, that's the restart of all the renewals that are required for the 18,000 plus people in Beltrami County who are currently on medical assistance. So it is a tremendous amount of work. And through some funds that DHS provided us, we're able to hire on 1 eligibility specialist and 2 case aides. And we plan to sunset those positions through attrition. We were going to sunset them on 7/1 of 24. Now, we've been learning more about this MA unwinding process since it started officially July 1 of just a few weeks ago. It is very complex. Like I mentioned, it's affecting about 1/3 of our county population. And there's been more rules that have rolled out about what we can and cannot do through this process. DHS also said that it's going to take a minimum of 14 months from the start, which was July 1, to fully go through this process with every case that we have. So with all of that in mind, we would like to keep those staff on through the use of Prime West reinvestment dollars for another 6 months through the end of 2024. We really think that would positively impact anybody who's going to have continued eligibility for medical assistance. And many of those people are Prime West members. So it does meet the goal of the grant, which is to serve Prime West Health members. Keeping them on Prime West really is the basis for what this grant is wanting to serve. The second way is we'd like to provide an influx of funding for those clients who require guardianship. Currently of our guardianship cases, all of them happen to be Prime West members. And guardianship is something that Health and Human Services provides when it is absolutely necessary due to an individual not being able to make decisions for themselves. That happens for a variety of reasons. Sometimes elderly, disabled individuals need assistance with this type of decision-making process. And it is something that the county has authority to do, but we do not do it unless it is absolutely necessary that the county take that role on. So it is something that we do if there's no family that is available to them, if they have limited resources, and they aren't able to, some people pay entities to provide guardianship for them. So this is something that we only do if we have to. But unfortunately, because of the increase in mental health cases and the increase in our vulnerable adult population, we're seeing ourselves have to take on more guardianship cases than we ever have in the past. Which ultimately is stretching the available resources for us to do this work. We do have a contract with Lutheran Social Services to do guardianship services, but they can only take on a limited number of individuals. We also manage guardianship cases internally as well. So we are requesting some support through this grant for guardianship services in the amount of $33,679. So that is the second way. The third way is to invest in some technology for Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services has a technology advisory committee that we have in collaboration with MIS. We started that about 1.5 years ago. I used to chair that committee, and now Curtis Anderson does, our economic assistance director, and Kevin Warren also sits on that committee. And we have been working through a number of technological challenges and opportunities in Health and Human Services since we started. It was interesting, the speaker before me talked about data security and risk reduction. These are things that we've been talking about in this committee, and we have come up with a number of ways to improve technology around those specific things. So we are going to be bringing a proposal to the budget process for some advancements in technology. The bulk of those costs are going to be funded through opportunities that Health and Human Services already has in funding sources, as well as MIS has available to them. And if we utilize these funds, it would bring down the ask to the budget committee by another $54,846. So we're trying to find internal sources to fund these technological improvements. The fourth way we'd like to spend the funds, well, actually we had a number of ideas on how to spend the funds. But ultimately there was a crisis in our community that affected the residents of Red Pine Estates, which I'm sure all of you commissioners are well aware of. And we really want to prioritize the needs of that population and invest the remaining amount of our county allocation, which would be $48,450 to assist our community in supporting the Red Pine residents. We would utilize these funds for continued necessary stays in hotels, food for them, relocation assistance, and any needed medical supplies. Some of them had to leave their homes without medical supplies that were available to them in their apartment setting and that they do not currently have in the hotel. We would like to support the residents to have what they need where they are. I do really want to say and let this board know that the community rallied around these residents and did an amazing job assisting them. But ultimately the costs associated with this displacement are going to exceed the funds that the community has been able to raise, and that's going to happen quite quickly. So we would like to assist as a funding support alongside other partner agencies that are doing so as well. Northwest Minnesota Foundation, HRDC, United Way, and many of our community residents are providing funds to help this group of individuals. And so we would like to take the remainder of this county allocation to utilize for that. So those are the 4 ways we want to use the county allocation. Now, the broader allocation that's open to any entity that wants to apply through a competitive grant process. It has to be used primarily for Prime West members, but it's very general in the support that it wants to provide. So it could be an entity like, let's say, our county jail, who maybe needs support around its medical facilities. Or maybe it's in-home service agencies. We know that our in-home service providers are struggling and they do not have the resources they need to provide services to people in their homes. So we really want to get the word out to those agencies about the availability of these funds. And so that's what we're doing. We're sending out the information. As ideas come to us, we're getting it to the people that we think would benefit from these funds. And we're also disseminating it broadly in different email groups we have, just different partnerships we have. So I encourage you as commissioners to send it to other entities as well that you think could benefit from the use of these funds and would apply. So with that, I am finished with my presentation and I am ready to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what was the dollar amount on the very first one where we extend the staff for 6 months?
It is $66,846.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. And can you provide maybe a spreadsheet of the dollar amounts that you're requesting? I think that would be helpful. I don't know if we're making a decision tonight. I was looking at the board packet and it just said informational. So is the board making a decision or how?
Side, but if you want to do that tonight or not.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering, could we have moved some money around to maybe adjust a few different things? You know, I'm still trying to figure out with this Red Pine situation, who is responsible, you know, for the cost of you know, the tenants moving and things like that. I mean, it just hearing that there's a $3,000 that were offered to the tenants if they signed a non-disclosure or some sort of waiver. You know, I'm trying to get, you know, more information in regards to that matter, which I don't feel is right. You know, I mean, if the property manager or the owner of the building, I should, should play more of a role into, assisting the tenants than, than $3,000. And it's, so I want to help. But I mean, I wish we had some numbers. I mean, I appreciate the update, but I guess having a budget in front of me would have been a little bit more helpful. So that's trying to wrap my head around all this. But
Can I speak to that a little bit, Commissioner Sumner? Just to give a little clarity on the amounts, there has to be a justification to ask for the amount I'm asking for. So each of them has a justification attached to it and how it supports Prime West members specifically. So for example, the third one, technology. I didn't randomly come up with the amount of $54,846. I looked at the total amount that we're investing in technology. And then I looked at the staff that serve Prime West members between 80 and 100% of their time. And I divided it by the number of total staff times it by the staff that utilize it 80% to 100% of the time. And that's how I have to justify each and every one of these costs. So it's difficult to move the amounts around without having some kind of justification of how it impacts the Prime West membership that I'm trying to support. So the four things are the continuation of staffing for 6 months. That cost is $66,846. The second is guardianship, and that cost is $33,679. And that is based on serving 7 to 10 Prime West members to support their guardianship needs on it for 1 year. The technology is $54,846. Again, I shared that calculation. And then the remaining amount is what I allocated for Red Pine. And I did that based on the fact that their hotel costs alone are over $11,000 a week currently. So I can't speak to Commissioner Sumner to whose responsibility and all those legal questions that you asked, but I certainly know that this community is desperately in need of assistance, and we want to keep a roof over their head for as long as we can. If there's an opportunity to recoup dollars that are spent assisting Red Pine residents in the future, I will certainly do that.
Thank you. One final question. So our tribes, do they receive this type of reinvestment funds as well, or are they included with the county?
They are included with the county.
Okay, we're got another couple of minutes for another question.
Just quickly to Commissioner Sumner's point about who's responsible, et cetera. It's just, it seems to me that I think the city has missed an opportunity in the past. They just redid their landlord ordinances. They collect money for inspection fees, and yet neglected to use those monies to have a reinsurance type program that they could have invested in case something catastrophic like this happened. It's a failure on the city's part, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that the housing company is supposed to be paying for these hotel costs. So I'm glad that the community is raising money, United Way, others. But before any of that money gets spent, why isn't the housing company fronting those costs like they said they would? I mean, they put it in writing. So that's kind of my biggest thing, is before these local funds that get raised get to the residents, the housing company should be paying first.
Okay.
So,
And,
okay.
and we can't ask you to solve these questions that we have.
Yeah, but what I do want to say is, a lot of times, as you, all of you commissioners well know, we serve as a safety net to the residents of this community. And so what I do know is that the funds the community raised are going to run out in the next week. And I've been on the phone with Prime West and I've said, what can we do? Can we assist these residents? And Prime West is ready to do that. And so despite all of those questions that I also have, I do not want these individuals to not have a way to pay for shelter, food, and then their medical needs.
That's true. That was actually my question. That was, how, you know, because you said you had specific justifications for the first three, and then you're gonna use the rest. So you did get approval from Prime West to use it for this purpose, even though it doesn't really have a direct tie to them. And it's not like they're Prime West customers of ours or anything.
Over 70% of the Red Pine residents are Prime West members.
Okay,
And also a number of them who have been through this displacement have already ended up in the hospital. And so Prime West knows well that if we can support them in the community, that is going to benefit them to stay in the community, to not be needing a higher level of care.
perfect. You hadn't spoken to that piece of it, so I just wanted to clarify how we were able to utilize these funds for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Goswick.
So with that, it is somewhat imperative that if we're going to do this, that we act on it and not just kind of kick it down the road. So I'm in favor of, with the justification that I've heard Ann speak, that it is a Prime West opportunity of reinvesting this particular group of funds. But in order to do that, we would need to move that onto our regular agenda and act on it. And we usually do not do that unless all 5 of us agree that it could be done. So,
Mr.
Jim?
Chair, I'm not too sure if I'm at that point to support it tonight. So, but I mean, if you want to put it for a vote, you know, that's fine. You know, I understand. So.
The other thought I had, commissioners, is I basically wrote it as informational, and if there were concerns, we could certainly move it to the regular agenda, of course. But if there aren't concerns on 3 of the 4 asks, maybe I could hold off on the fourth ask until this board has an opportunity to vote, which is later today. I just won't be able to stay for the regular session today to answer any additional questions.
I guess, again, personally, I look at 1 to 3. Part of our daily business. Me. The fourth one. Perhaps I heard more questions on that, who's responsible, whatever. When it comes down to it. Maybe we have to okay. Others?
I think that the situation is kind of all over, haven't done here, that type of a thing, because of others falling short, we're put in the position of having to pick up the tab for an emergency scenario like this, and it's like very unfortunate that the building owner, the city, I don't know how much the city has ponied up to help with the situation, if anything. But I feel like we're drawing a short straw yet again. And so I think that it's, it's very unfortunate. I'm okay with, if Commissioner Sumner isn't, wanting to put it on tonight's agenda for all of it, I would be okay with just doing the first 3 like you had just mentioned. But I also would be supportive of bringing forth and utilizing the funds for everything that Ann has brought to us too. I'll go either way on it.
Just if we can get we're not voting on it right now, but
I think we can vote on it at the regular session. I'm generally open to all 4 proposals.
we're okay with putting it on and doing the vote.
I am.
Are you okay with that?
Just
Yeah, I'm okay with it, but I just don't know if I'm supportive of it. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's fine, I mean,
I think we need to.
yeah, well, I mean, the first 3, you mentioned that are kind of relate to county business, and we're not, I mean, we are working on budgets and whatnot. So I don't see the urgency to vote on it tonight until we get a little bit more information in regards to the red pine. I don't, but like I said, I'm fine with either way.
Okay. All right. We will put it on the agenda to vote on. And we'll decide at that time whether it's 1 through 3 or if it's 1 through 4.
And Ann, could you just make sure that you have that on a sheet of paper, those exact dollar amounts, because I rounded mine and
I will email it to you all before I leave.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is collaboration that we have, I believe, with BSU and NTC.
That's correct. If you recall, back in April, Commissioner Joe Gould had asked for an update on collaboration that we have with BSU and NTC. And so at that time, I approached Administrator Tom Berry and said, hey, I have a meeting set up. Ann and I could ask those kind of questions and get that information for you. So we met with Dr. John Hoffman, the president of BSU and NTC. And this is kind of what our takeaways were from that conversation. We learned that there were prior collaborations taking place between the county and BSU and NTC, but when COVID hit, a lot of those things just kind of fizzled out. And they were impacted by more things than just COVID, but that's kind of the timeliness of those events. Other things that impacted those collaborations are also more students applying for online programs and less students attending campus colleges or attending university colleges, and then also looking at having to decrease some of the courses that they actually offer in which we had those collaborations. But what we all agreed on is that moving forward, we do have opportunities for collaboration. Currently, the primary one that we that never really fizzled out is public health takes nursing students once a year, usually every fall, and we they have like a kind of an internship, clinical practice, being able to be exposed to public health and the services that we provide. And in that opportunity, they do go with our social workers, they go with nursing, and a variety of other, individuals just to get an idea of the services that we provide in the county, through Health and Human Services. And so where we left things is that, Dr. John Huffman was going to, help Anna and I connect with the university, department heads for different programs that we may be able to provide, some, opportunities for those students. So that's what I have for you for an update.
Mr. Chair, is there anyone here from BSU?
Not that I'm aware of.
Which is,
So it seems there's room for improvement. You mentioned one, I think there should be 10 partnership things in the works. I mean, the county, BSU has a lot of similar departments. And so like, I feel like a lot of our department heads and the department heads over at BSU that work on a lot of the same things, they probably should be communicating with each other on a regular basis. I mean, we could get internships lined up. I know there's some counties that partner with colleges throughout the state that have pretty nice internship programs lined up. So I'm happy to hear your report, both you, Amy, and Ann, and I thank you for meeting with John on that. And you know, I feel like there's definitely some more things on the horizon that we can be working on collaboratively together. So I appreciate your remarks and your update on the nursing program. But I feel like there's a lot more left to do, especially in light with the Red Pine Estates building closure. You know, we were trying to figure out housing for folks, and so I reached out to the vice president, Travis Green, and he assured me that they could offer up Pine Hall as a temporary solution. And then all of a sudden yesterday, that's not happening anymore. So I feel like when challenges arise, or even when there's not challenges, you know, we need to be doing a better job collaborating, the county and BSU. You know, BSU's in my district, and you know, I'm a proud BSU alumni. So anytime there's an opportunity for the two entities to work together, I don't think we should shy away from it. So yeah, thanks again, and hopefully this isn't the end.
thank you. Okay. Let's move on to aquatic invasive species. And I believe I saw Bruce and Bill here.
Hello,
Hello, Bill.
Hello.
Bruce.
Bruce. I have two slides that I'm going to show you because it's easier to picture it than me to describe it. So I've been told to give you an update on our starry storm in the county. So here's our new infestation that we found 2 weeks ago. And the DNR should be putting a news article out about it this week, hopefully. That is North Twin Lake, and you see the little gray square there is where I found the starry storm at. I was able to check the bay to the north of that, and there wasn't any starry storm in there, but the rest of my search for the lake wasn't very productive because it was too windy. I couldn't see very well. I was getting tossed around a little bit. So I have to wait a little bit for the correct weather so to do a further search of the area. I also got a couple of volunteers that are going to help me. So they live on North Twin and South Twin. So we're going to check that out. Just for our reference, there are 24 infested water bodies in Minnesota with starry stonewort, and Beltrami County has 11 of them now.
Oh,
So that's our new infestation. So what are we doing about it? Next. So this is the breakdown of what our management is of our starry stonewort in the county. So you can see the top four there, North Twin, Pamoosh, Wolf, or top four, the top greenish color. We are doing some type of management on it. And you can see in there that our Beltrami County AIS fund is doing most of the funding, even though we have been able to reach out and get partners. So like different lake associations and even different resorts are willing to donate money to help manage these sites because they're worried about them. So we got most of those, the ones that we don't manage, Cass, the Mississippi River, the Leaf Lake Band is managing those sites. They have a diver assisted suction harvesting. So what they do is they have a diver go down there, hand pull it, and they have a big shop vac that they push it into and it sucks it up and puts it into the thing. Long term, hopefully, once they get that system running very smoothly, we will hire them to do our management of the starry stonewort. But right now, what I did is I sent out and they've already done one handful this year. We've already done one handful with the company that we hired. And we did a process of asking people to put in donations, putting bids in on our starry stonewort, and then we selected one of them. And they're actually going to be, they were up here at the very beginning of July. And they're going to be here next week again to handful these spots. So hopefully we will keep the biomass down and it won't get transported either throughout the lake or within the water body. The one that the big turtle, if you remember when big turtle was first infested, we had the DNR came in with a prototype equipment from a company that actually didn't do a very good job. And right now we're just handling that as a management around the access so people don't get their starry stonewort on trailers and stuff and haul it out. So, and then the last two on Moose Lake and Upper Red are at resorts mostly. Moose Lake is actually pretty widespread in the water body. So the resorts are just managing around their docks and their access. Why the Upper Red one is actually at Westwind Resort and they manage that starry stonewort in their harbor. So, do you guys have any questions about the stuff?
questions? No,
Sounds like it should be called scary stone.
It is, it's a very, I'm more worried about that than zebra mussels. Because with zebra mussels, your water body is still there. You can still use it. You just have to worry about it. And I never thought I'd ever get cut by zebra mussels because I know about the hazard. I got cut first week of July. Because I was tubing down the Mississippi and I got tripped on the rocks and my leg went down and sat on my leg and I was pulled by our inner tubes across the zebra mussels. So me and my little nephew debated on who bled the most. So
contest.
yeah, but anything else there?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Bruce, thanks. I know you've had some communications with one of my constituents and
Oh, yeah.
that about the Turtle River Lake situation and just wondering, so are they going to be back next week to work on that one?
Yes, and I've been working with Kent, so he's in the loop for everything. And then when we first handful, he was actually on vacation, I found. So I was sending him emails and he never
Oh.
reply, and I'm going, what the heck? But he was on vacation.
Okay.
So that's totally understandable. He got back to me, so he knows that we've handfulled it once. And I do check the sites after the person goes in handfuls, and hand pulling it gets real tough. Because as soon as you pull up one, sediment gets suspended.
Right.
So it starts getting harder and harder to see as you're hand pulling. So you're not going to get all of it. And even after for this management technique, it's a lot better than chemical. We found out that chemical, and I say we, that's me, the DNR, and the research, Minnesota's research facility, found out that chemical doesn't really do much to it. It still keeps growing, comes back just as fast or faster. So the
Right.
best thing that we found is handful, but that gets a little tough and you have to handful it more than once and over multiple years to keep that down. So, yeah, and I sent emails to Kent So I've updated Kent on everything, and he's the manager of City of Turtle River Lake.
He's
So-
the mayor of Turtle River.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mayor, what did I say?
Manager, whatever.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, he's
That
the
too.
mayor of Turtle River Lake. So he's aware of it, and and I say manager because Turtle River Lake is the administrator manager of that access. So, yeah,
Is there a reason why we wouldn't be able to have the volunteers that want to be able to pull, that have scuba certification and the, background that they would be more than willing to help with the hand pulling?
yep, I've already talked to a few, but right now the DNR has Starry Stonewart under research grants. So I got 3 grants for doing the work in Beltrami County.
Mhm.
And those are something that the DNR just opened up. And it's still under a research type thing to where we need to document the area. We figure out how much we sent and everything else. So it's just easier to have a company do it right now because they can document everything really well. And since it's under that research grant, we really can't have just volunteers go in and do it. I'm talking to Nicole, which is the invasive species specialist from the DNR for the region. And she is trying to get it under a regular aquatic plant management permit. It'd still be invasive aquatic plant management, but it won't be a research permit. And then we can go in there ourselves. And once we get the permit, we can go in there ourselves and start hand pulling it.
I would assume that after the second run next week, that that company won't be back.
No, I do not think so.
And so I was just saying, it's unlikely from the sound of it that it'll be totally eradicated.
No.
And so later this year or whenever you would deem it advantageous to maybe allow those volunteers to go do it at that point, since it's not under the grant anymore at that point.
Well, it's still under research though. So you can't
So we're gonna let it grow. I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense either.
That's why we're in there hand pulling it.
Right, but if we've got people that volunteer for it, doesn't cost anything to hand pull it.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's some common sense that could apply here.
Yeah, well, tell that to the DNR.
Yeah.
Because it's in the water, so they're in charge of it. So I have to have a permit to do it.
Okay.
And in order to do it, I have to tell them what we're doing. And then they approve it or not. So I told them we were having this company do it. We're doing 2 polls. I couldn't talk to Cole and maybe get the company to come up here and do it again. Which depending upon the growth rate, I may do. But I'm 100% sure she wouldn't let me have volunteers go in and do it yet.
Okay.
So I'm hoping in a couple of years we will, because I already have a bunch of volunteers that want to do it on Wolf Lake. And I have another volunteer that's willing to do it out of Clearwater Lake, but that he just wants to go out to other lakes and do it. So he's
Yeah.
from a Clearwater Lake Association.
I would just as soon not have Turtle River Lake end up like Moose Lake.
Yeah,
That's my
Yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
if we have people that are willing to do it, we need to twist some arms to let them do it.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
yeah, and I agree with that. It's just the DNR moves slow and, they have to dot their i's and
No.
cross their t's. So.
Initial DNR stand for something.
We'll move on. Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Tim?
Bruce? So I noticed you had some funding sources.
Yeah.
And I see in Upper Red Lake, the resorts are responsible for managing that.
Yep.
So who determines which funding or where the funding sources go? Kind of curious about that.
Well, I'll tell you the one on the Red Lake with Westwind Harbor. So what we did is when we found that Starry Stonewart, we did a massive search on all the other harbors. And we didn't find any Starry Stonewart anywhere. So it was only in that harbor. Looking at the way Starry Stonewart grows and reproduces, we don't think it will ever get out into Red Lake just because it's so dark and wave action and everything else. So really, we're only worried about the harbors, but all the harbors are kind of privately owned. And talking to the resort, they volunteered to make sure that it's not getting on trailers and stuff. So they're managing that infestation in that harbor area. I never offered them any money. I did talk to Brent about it, and he was pretty shy about us giving money to a private Resort to handle the Starry Summer, but I don't think he made a final decision on it. But they haven't really asked for anything, and it's relatively cheap. As long as it's, and the way Nicole looks at it is she looks at it not necessarily as public water. She looks at it as that private harbor belongs to Western Resort. So she's letting them,
So the water
Right.
belongs to the state, but the harbor belongs to the resort.
yeah. Yeah, it gets tricky. Don't quote me on that. But yep, so because it is Starry Stonewort and it's a new infestation for, a new invasive species for Minnesota. So they're trying to get as much data from Starry Stonewort growth and the way it reacts and everything else.
So I'm just kind of curious to, how, I mean, you mentioned West Wind. West Wind is a very popular resort. You
Yeah,
know,
it is.
it's a huge tourist attraction.
Yep.
But to me personally, I don't know if it's right to cut them out because it's a private resort, and
And we didn't really,
they're a
cut
huge economic driver to this county, to Waskish Kelly area. So, I mean, it kind of, bothers me that,
well, we didn't really cut them out. They offered to do it. We did get a CD3 machine installed there too. Because we got the grant from Minnesota Lakes, not Minnesota Lakes and Rivers. Crap, I forgot, Jeff Forrester. But he got a grant for the Stop Starry campaign. So we were able to get a CD3 machine there with clean drain dry machine that has the shop vac and the blower and the other tools to be at the Western Resort where that Starry Stonewort is at. So we are helping them, and I do talk to them on a yearly basis, and I do check the Starry Stonewort in that harbor. And I suggest when it's like, yeah, you guys should really treat this. And then I go up there 2 weeks later and all the Starry Stonewort is just goo. So they do it, and I don't know how much it costs, but from talking to someone else, I don't think it's very expensive for them. So I think it's maybe like $200 or something.
we do have a county commissioner on the AAS committee, correct?
Who was showing up? I forgot.
I know in the past there was Jim Lukacek. I don't
Yeah.
know if,
Someone came, I forgot, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was John, wasn't it?
Well, I went on to I tuned in to the meeting at the.
Oh. I don't know.
I've been going to the Joint Natural Resources Board
Okay.
meetings.
Cause I have 2 meetings a year, one in the spring here to go over the budget, and then one in the fall to go over what we did last year. So I don't know. I have to check my notes.
one more final
Okay.
question. So you mentioned that Brent determines who receives
Well,
the funding?
I talked to Brent about it, and he said, well, if it's not that much, do we have to do it? Because it is a private business, that they're a private harbor. Do we want to send money to a private institution? Public money to a private business to improve their business. I don't know if it's improving their business or not, but it's helping to prevent the spread of Starry Stonewort. And I talked to and I forget his name right now, with the owner has like 3 sons that work there, and I get their names all mixed up all the time. But I talk to him regularly, and they've never really asked for any help or anything like that. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for, is if they ask for the help. I don't want to necessarily go, hey, we got a bunch of money for you. And then, get to that thing. Because right now, we only have so much money, and I'm already managing. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 8 sites. So, and Turtle River Watershed actually offered to give us money. I didn't ask Turtle River Watershed to give us money for managing Big Turtle. They said, do you need money for Big Turtle? I said, yeah, we will take any money you want to give us. So that's kind of the way I'm playing it. I mean, if we really wanted to, we could go there and offer them money, but I kind of don't want to because I'm using it for other stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But if they ask, I will definitely tell Brent that they asked and we will work whatever we have to do to figure out what we need to do. But I don't think it's very much really. I'm almost thinking that, because that harbor is pretty small area. And what they do is they buy a granular algicide and then they just spread it around in the harbor and the stuff turns to goo. And then about 3 weeks later, it comes back and it's all back. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to, solid waste transfer site. Joel?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Mr. Chair. You have my slides down. Okay, so this is kind of a revisit or a little history. A couple years ago, we did a study and I was actually asked to do this study because we have a gap in service for solid waste. We're looking at if in the next couple slides will actually show it in a picture. So we looked at some different sites that we could that were available at that time. Met with the solid waste committee meeting, or we had a solid waste committee meeting. 2 of the commissioners are on that this morning, and we're not so, I guess I'm not stuck on the sites. It's more about the concept of continuing on with this venture. We put it on hold because of COVID. Solid waste was not doing all that great, and solid waste, I just wanted the department to get healthy again with finances. So that's why we put, or basically tabled this or shelved this whole new opportunity. So wrong way. So this is what we currently have for services. So you look at a 10-mile buffer, and then we have one more service area, which is up in Fort Town. And that pretty much covers all of the Fort Town area with that 10-mile radius up there. So you can see the 10 strike area and that Turtle River area, we have a gap in service in here. And that's what we were asked to consider. How would we potentially give everyone the same service? So looking at that, couple of the different areas that we had basically made it possible where we could close the gap in our Venn diagram, where all of our circles started to cross over each other. So one thing is we could move it a little bit farther north and even have probably a little bit more of a intersection if it got closer to the 10 strike area. But again, it's not necessarily the location right now. It's more of the solid waste fund is healthy again. And I believe that this could be an additional service we could offer our constituents this next year if the full board supported something like this. So then again, the sites are kind of immaterial, but it's really the concept of providing another service to provide those that don't have a solid waste facility within 10 miles. And this does so, and I just want to kind of more, so the solid waste fund is separate from any levy dollars. We have our own account. We generate our own money. We do get some money from special assessment, but we also charge money at our facilities. And as I was informed this morning, it is an enterprise, it's not an enterprise fund, but for how I want to look at it, it's an enterprise fund. So so with that being said, is when I say it doesn't affect any levy increases, this money is for solid waste and meant to be spent on solid waste activities. And we're asking for about $150,000 to complete this site.
and really looking for questions.
Thanks, Brian. So the solid waste fund that you have that you would use to make that site, what other projects would utilize that fund? So what other projects that you might have would have to be shelved in order to do that? Is there some competing interest within the solid waste for that money?
The transfer station remodel is really the biggest, I guess, project that I would have. We are currently looking at, we currently applied for some different grants because we're gonna be, in the next few years, demolition debris will be handled differently because our demolition site will be closed because the state will no longer permit a online demolition facility. So we are gonna have basically a transfer station that's made to deal with demolition debris. So, and all of our demolition will end up and getting transported to a line facility.
Commissioner Carlson, maybe I could help with that. Brian has actually done a pro forma, and all of the, including what he just mentioned, is all able to be covered with the revenues projected for the solid waste budget moving forward for the next several years, including this. So this wouldn't affect the levy. It wouldn't be a budget. It's got to be brought to the budget committee as an exception or whatever you call it, but it doesn't, it's not like all the other departments, all the other department exceptions are affecting the levy and increasing our percentage of how much we would tax the residents. This would not be that way, but because it's new or different, it still has to go through the budget process. So just want to make sure that's clear that it's able to be paid for with the revenues that we are currently charging through the solid waste department.
Correct. Right, and I guess the caveat that it doesn't look like we'd have any increase in solid waste fees for at least the 5 years that I projected out, so. Correct.
I guess my only concern would be it competing with the transfer site remodel.
It would really wouldn't be because, and I guess, Joe, what I meant by that is when we were looking at getting this grant now, which is a $6 million grant. There's 9 counties applying for this. We feel pretty confident that we have enough support, not only with MPCA, but we're even now going into trying to get some more legislative support with this. But I want to hold off on the transfer station remodel or the recycling building remodel because I think we can use some of that $6 million to help facilitate some of the things that we want to do within that complex.
So what is the wish?
I guess the wishes were to, for the full board, I guess, support moving on with something like this, once the budget committee would approve it. I think that was the intent of me coming here today. Mhm.
It seems reasonable to assume or to expect that all county residents should have somewhat the same access to services, and there's obviously a void there, so I think that would be.
Even if it is.
Getting me back to the comment.
All right, guys.
Any other questions?
So do we have consensus for Brian, and then so you would have to go back and look at locations and stuff like that, but as long as the budget committee approves it, this looks like something that could be brought back to the board for final approval.
Right, and I guess the caveat, and it's probably not the place, but that's one of the things we talked about this morning in our solid waste committee meeting is that all the enhancements that the committee this morning agreed that all of the enhancements made sense to continue moving forward with. It's just now going through the formal process of going through the budget committee.
So, Mr. Chair, my question is, I mean, I know that we've been talking about this for a few years now. And you're coming to the board before you go to the budget committee to make this request? It's kind of, I mean, I'm kind of confused about that
Well,
part.
I was asked to present this to get everyone on the same page on this new service.
So wouldn't the current budget committee members get that update being?
Mr. Chair. I think, help shed some light on this. The initial request made 2 years ago was by the Board of County Commissioners. Commissioner Lukacek brought it up. It was discussed in open meeting. At that point in time, it was decided that if we had funds available at some point in time in the future, we would bring it back to the board. Those funds have become available. Those funds were being requested through the Budget Committee. My position on it was that since the conversation started at the board level and it's a new service, essentially in a new area, that it should come back to the board first for you to decide whether or not you felt it was appropriate to expand that service instead of relying on it solely to go through the budget committee because the conversation started at the board level. If you agree that it is a service that you want to expand by adding another area, then we would like your direction as a board to the budget committee that says, yes, please favorably consider this as it moves through the process. So that's why it's just a little bit differently because it started at the board. It is a service area issue. And we wanted to make sure the full board was aware, especially now that we have 2 new members. And then with your concurrence, Brian can keep it in the budget. If the board feels otherwise and doesn't want to expand the service at this point in time, his direction will be to remove that enhancement request from the budget. The budget committee won't even look at it.
Right. I think I'd support it.
We just need a head nod.
I think so.
That's all you need.
General support here.
Well, I see it all as.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
I don't know if we should need 3 meetings like this, because you guys are coming kind of loose. Especially the one to my left, a little farther.
That must be you.
Yeah. All right, could we have, at this point, administrative, let's see, report, update, administrator's update, I guess. We've already done the waste management. Okay. You're on, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's only been a week since we met, so I don't have a whole lot for you, but if I talk really slow, I think. I
You got to drag it out. Yeah.
So, actually, no, I wanted to remark just a little bit on your earlier meeting, at 2 o'clock today with the board. And, just to clarify a few things that they weren't clear, and also thank you for the benefit of the public. When I joined the county a while ago, the community health board was operating as a meeting within inside of a work session. And that made me a bit uncomfortable in regards to some of the actions and activities that need to occur for the community health board. And the way the county got around that was essentially move those items to the regular session of the commission meeting, which really wasn't the community health board, although we are the same. So what we're doing with Anne's calling out the same issue and us discussing it is we've made the change and separate out the community health board as its own separate meeting. And by doing so, it gives you, the community health board, which is also our commission, full authority to set policy, to make decisions on budgets or other requests, and it doesn't need to go through the work session or a regular session. So as a standalone board, you will operate as a standalone board now. And we'll figure that out because we made some motions and we did all of that. But that's really for the benefit of the community more than anything. A couple other things I just wanted to touch on with that structural change is that our office, Diane and I, as the county administration office, will continue to publish notices and agendas and all that, but we will active support to that group. But they will be developing all of their own agendas, all of their own memos, they'll be organizing the agenda. They'll be getting all of that stuff pulled together, that's essentially given to us and we'll publish. So we'll help them with the publishing, we'll also help them with the minutes, so we'll take all the minutes for them. And we'll record the meetings, so that way they don't have to have staff for that stuff. So that part won't change, there will be some problems over there. But essentially what we wanted to do is really just formalize that. The CBH or CHP director, Amy was here earlier today, is also going to act as the board administrator for those meetings. And so we just wanted to make sure that was clear. If there's any questions, I want to make it right off for those.
Jim?
Mr. Chair. So if a public health board member wants to inquire a little bit more about a presentation or request, kind of similar future work meeting topic, would they go through Amy, or would we go through the, have the same, guidelines of requesting, topics?
Right, so they will go in setting the agenda. I know it's very, very similar to the way that we kind of work set file. At this point, however, we do not have a public speaking opportunity in the health board. Thank you for that clarification. Very glad I'm not done. All right, excellent. Okay, so just quickly wanted to update you on the Delta project, and wanted to let you know that over the next couple of weeks, we'll be working on the liquor option sales tax resolution and ballot. That information will need to be submitted to the Secretary of State. We'll be making this progress on that over the next couple of weeks. We'll have something for you. Maybe we can look at it either the August 1st meeting or the 15th meeting. Also wanted to let you know that we are working to secure an alternative location for the jail project. The New County Jail, as you might know, the Greater Duluth Planning Board have instituted a moratorium for jails on all residential zone areas within their limits. So we are pivoting with that information, and I'll have more to share with you in the regular session. We do hope to have a new property identified and a perfect facility negotiated so that I can bring it back to you by the August 1st. Stuff will be on that, but that is the goal. And then also we would plan, if that was the case, to hold a public hearing on August 15th in regards to that site. So a little bit more detail for that. Also, in that I think this is for the days, June 20th from 4:30, excuse me, to June 5. We're in July already, it's hard to believe. We will have our employee appreciation celebration. That'll be in the courtyard, weather pending. And if not, and the weather is terrible, then we plan to do it. Also, the Northwestern and Minnesota Juvenile Center does have their celebration in day from 11:30 to 2:30 earlier. Thursday, July 1 as well. And so far,
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Tom. We emailed about the meeting at BSU the other day, but I wasn't sure if, I know you were invited. Did you attend?
I did it.
Okay, can you give a little recap on?
Yeah, so, and I don't want to get the name wrong. I don't know if it's Vice President of Academic Affairs, I believe is right. Alan Bedford has been charged with doing what is called a map. And I'm not going to remember exactly what it means, but it's essentially their students use this challenge to evaluate academic programs and bring relevance and programs and reach. So there was a request made maybe, I don't know, several weeks ago, 4 weeks ago or something. By Alan to invite various members of the community to sit at kind of a round table and essentially discuss what our workforce needs are, what our program needs are, what issues and concerns there are in the community, how the university may be able to modify its academic programs to meet those needs. So there are members from all over, including housing agencies, city of Bemidji, several from the university, I was representing county, and a couple other agencies as well. And essentially, we spent time talking about issues and concerns in the community and how maybe the university might be able to take that out there, seeing the kind of programs. They shared some information about the GIS tool that they're developing, and they also shared information about sort of enrollment and concerns around enrollment and budget and those sorts of things too. So not sure what comes next, to be honest with you.
No, I appreciate that. I know the mayor was invited, so I'm glad we had some representation there. So appreciate you being there and I think the District 2 representative could be there next time, but talking with Bedford and Dr. Hoffman about that. So thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Last week we had an update from the HRDC, I believe, in regards to an economic development authority. I guess I walked away from that meeting unclear on the reason for the update and what our next moves are. So if we can put that on the agenda, maybe sometime in the future, whenever, time allows. I think that would be helpful because I got a 45-minute drive home, and I often think about the meetings and the things that we discuss. And I was wondering, well, where does, the Greater Bemidji play in all of this? And I thought Greater Bemidji was, working in a sense on the county's behalf on economic development. So I was just kind of confused on, what our next steps are. So, I mean, if we can get an update sometime, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. Chair, I had those same questions when I first heard about it too, Commissioner Sumner. But what Tom had brought to us, if you recall, the ability for us to get a lot of federal funding by just having an EDA. And so I think that, that's something we definitely, and I believe we told them to put it on a future work meeting topic to get us more detail on it already. But I think that we definitely don't want to discount Greater Bemidji and HRDC and some of these other great organizations that are already performing a lot of that same function, but just the ability of us to have one. And we're one of only 2 counties, I think, in the whole area that don't have one. And I know HRDC works with a lot of EDAs. And so I think it's something that we probably want to move forward with just for the simple access to the funding that we could get. So.
Thank you. You're exactly right. And the discussion was really that it was the start of conversation. There's no expectation for decision making at that meeting. I did hope that more time could be spent, but of course you knew that we were running late on that meeting. And so we will reschedule. Lucas could come back. I've also got a meeting Friday with Bemidji, talking about the very same issue. And so we'll be just continuing the dialogue on behind the scenes. The reason I teed it up a little bit earlier was because I have an enhancement for your consideration on getting one started, and wanted to just sort of see where initially your pulse was. If it was something the board kind of wasn't interested in, of course you have to make a decision. But if you weren't at least inclined to kind of consider it, I would just pull that enhancement back and just let the thing try. But I think what I got was, yes, there's some interest there. I'll continue with the enhancement. We'll also bring Lucas back for a second presentation. I hope we'll schedule that in August. And that's when the budget committee will also be doing its work as well. And then, you'll have something in the preliminary budget. If by that time, you're not interested, we can pull it again back. Go there. But as Commissioner Gottlieb said, there's lots of benefits to it. The questions about how it will be administered are to be determined. We can administer it ourselves, which wouldn't advise that we limited on staff resources. Or we can contract for somebody to administer it, and that's kind of what the HRC is doing. Or we can contract with greater community, or any other organization involved, sort of stop it. So those conversations haven't happened. We're just talking about, other than what I did, kind of consider this and what's the pros and cons. Cost. So that's really the beginning of the conversation.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just add that when that does come up, we make sure that Dave Hengel can be here also to represent Greater Bemidji at the same time. Thank you. Thank you.
I think he would actually probably speak in favor of it. And,
Well, Lucas did mention that Dave is in favor of
yeah,
pursuing some
And,
option.
But
I mean, when we could do the same program with that, if we agree that we want to do it, we could put on RFP, just like we are for that other trust fund that we set up for those other monies, and, you know, let the best organization wins, who's gonna run it for us.
I did check with Dave Campbell prior to putting it on the agenda.
very good. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, just some feedback for the team up here on the PDFs. I really liking the links in there with the page numbers. Appreciate that. But I was wondering, I work with PDFs a lot and I'm used to hitting Control F to find keywords throughout the document. I noticed that wasn't really a option. So I don't know how big of a challenge that would be to do that going forward, but you know, sometimes these things are 100 pages long and it's easy to just do a keyword search and go right to the page where the keyword is. You know how you hit Control F on the keyboard and type in the word and it brings you to that page, so.
Commissioner Gould, I think that may be the version or because I'm able to do it on mine, but I have the pro version. So I'm curious if that's what it is, but we could look into that and see. It might be, if you're using just the reader, that might be limited. I did think that the reader had a search bar on it, but I don't think it's Control F function.
It's
compatible.
I think I've experienced not being able to do it both ways, going to the commissioner web page and then opening up the work packet as a separate tab in the web browser. I wasn't able to do Control F there, but I'm not able to do Control F as a Acrobat Reader PDF either. So as a separate file type of thing.
We can look into that. It defaults for.
Yeah.
It defaults on my computer to Microsoft Edge. So when Edge brings it up and launches it, if you hit Control F, it brings up a bar. It's not necessarily all that
Right.
intuitive, but brings up a bar and then you can look and it'll highlight. But I try not to default to that. I try to, because I have the professional version, I'm able to do more like editing and stuff like that if I need to. But we'll look into it and see if we can't bring in some of that functionality or something, or maybe it's just isolated to your computer and it's just I know sometimes you can fix the last, like the dot whatever to associate with a certain program and maybe that's as simple as it is. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Okay,
So on that topic, is there, once you utilize that link to get down to the exhibits, is there a way to is there a button or a control function to just get back to the agenda?
There is. Actually, it's the scroll bar on the right. You just have to scroll all the way to the.
Hold page up, down.
you're locked into that, right?
We don't have a go back button. I mean, I know you can program all that stuff in there. Our attempt initially was to just see if you liked it and to and try to as minimally, with a minimal amount of effort, see if we could kind of launch this. We do have a short turnaround time. And so making all that programming each time we have a lot of pages too. could be particularly different, but we know that you like it now, so we'll play with it a little bit more and see what else.
At least one does.
And I'll just remind you that we.
Majority, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, any,
Yes.
Mhm.
any other business that needs to come forth for the work session? If not, we will adjourn until 5 o'clock. And say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will start the evening with any citizens that would like to address the board. Anyone wishing to address the county board on item not on the agenda to come forward at this time to be recognized by the board chair. Please state your name and address for the record. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. Personnel complaint against an individual county employee may not be heard initially at a board meeting. Personnel complaint may be submitted to the board in writing to the county administrator's office.
Good evening, Commissioners. Christopher Muller, 3263 Doral Drive Northeast. I apologize for my raspy voice, but the most recent wildfire smoke has caused congestion and coughing. It's just very unpleasant right now. I'm going to read off of my script, otherwise you'll be buzzing me off in 5 minutes because you guys know that I like to talk. So I live just east of Bemidji and frequently have business in town. The most direct route would be directly across Lake Bemidji. I don't think there will be a bridge built anytime in the near future. Bruce just confirmed that. So I most frequently make my way to Highway 197, normally hitting 4 red lights, jockeying with other cars around the curves over the Mississippi River. Eventually I have to make my way on First Street East while trying to avoid other drivers who don't know how to navigate a double turn lane and who has the right of way. Bouncing along First Street East with traffic lane arrangement I don't fully understand, trying to avoid being sideswiped, and then go from 5 lanes to 2. Eventually I get to my final 2 stretches of highway, 2 county roads to a township road, and finally my driveway. Alternatively, I'll take the scenic route. If I'm going from downtown, a quick drive to 15th Street, and then getting on Highway 197. Only 1 more stoplight that is normally green for northbound traffic to hop on a county road. A few more miles and then there's an improved intersection with turn lanes and a bypass lane. One that appears designed for high traffic volumes. The road is narrower than most county roads, but only for a little while. Do people speed through here? Undoubtedly. I've never experienced a traffic jam through here personally, so I can only base my assumption that the county road is capable of handling the traffic volume. I'll travel Birchmont Beach Road until County Road 19, and I'm excited to see the new trail construction and that there will be separation to those enjoying it. Why would I drive out of my way rather than take the most direct route to enjoy the beauty of our county? More times than not, I'll see a McGeezy or a Wawashkishi, eagle or deer along the north side of the lake, especially if I make a loop through the state park that so many traverse County Road 20 do as a destination. We can extend the bypass all along Sumac Road, and I would still prefer to take County Road 20. I hope there are significant other explorations of mitigating solutions before it is even considered severing this arterial route that is used by so many residents and visitors to the county. I don't live along a busy county road, but can appreciate the concern of those who do. Perhaps our sheriff's office can be requested to do some enhanced patrol to alleviate the speed concerns along this stretch of road as a start. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, not seeing anyone. I'd like to get a motion to approve of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I would move the agenda as written with the following 2 additions. 10A, the discussion of the opioid settlement steering committee and approval or not approval of that and a committee assignment from one of the commissioners. And 10B, discussion about the Prime West Community Reinvestment Funds.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that. motion with maybe a friendly amendment to include this new committee assignment to the committee list.
No, I think we can.
Or just put that as part of 10B. So appointing Commissioner Sumner as well as that appointment being added to the list. No, that's 10B.
No, no, 10A,
Right,
10A, you're right, 10A.
Sorry,
yes.
I haven't written backwards.
Yes.
All right. Are we agreed?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I was also wondering if we could, pull approval of agreement for website redesign. I just have a couple quick questions and just looking for some more info there.
7D,
Yep,
move that.
See, the 10C.
yes.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right. Approval of the consent agenda. So,
Chair, I move the consent agenda as written, except for removing 7D to the regular agenda.
there's a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right. Let's start with the five, 7, and 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I have before you an update regarding the county jail project, site selection criteria. We'll just jump right in here. There we go. Perfect. Just a quick reminder of the timeline that we've been operating under. And again, most of this information you're familiar with, so this is really for the community's benefit. So I'll try to move through this fairly quickly. But in mid-November, the county board decided to build a new jail between November and January of this year. The design and operations subcommittee developed a rating criteria and identified a number of properties, and then evaluated those properties with that criteria. In February of this year, the board identified the preferred property initially as the Holmes property. And between March and April of this year, there was negotiation on that property and then also additional investigation on it. Ultimately, the county did withdraw that based on a number of concerns and an inability to come to terms. Between April and May, the board did authorize the pursuit of 4 other properties. And on May 31st, the board approved the purchase agreement known as the Weebolt property. On June 20th, the board held a public hearing on the Weebolt location, heard from a lot of citizens who expressed concerns. On June 21st through July 12th, the design and operations subcommittee revised its siting criteria and also identified additional locations based in large part upon the public sentiment that was received at the public hearing on June 20th. And then June 28th, we had a bit of a setback, if you want to call it that, where the evening before we were going to submit our rezone and application for a CUP to the Joint Planning Board, we were issued a legal memo, which essentially said more or less that the jails would not be allowed anywhere inside the city limits in the Joint Planning Board's zoning ordinance. On July 12th, we saw that the planning board placed a moratorium on jails, but they confined the moratorium to just residential zones, allowing the project to continue in essentially all other zones. So that's kind of where we got to as it relates to today. And I wanted to update you just a little bit as it relates to the siting criteria. What you see on the screen here is the original siting selection criteria. There was about 12 criteria, and within those, there were some sub-criteria that were used. All of these criteria remain. There were no changes made to any of this that's on the screen right now. Essentially, the criteria, the only criteria that was really changed was siting criteria number 9, which deals with neighborhood impacts. And essentially, originally, the criteria that was being used for neighborhood impacts was based upon an impact associated by adjacent properties to the one being considered. With public input and concern about, neighborhood concerns extending farther beyond that, the design operations team extended that view. And instead of this criteria, expanded it to a number of residences that were within 1,000-foot buffer. So it's instead of being adjacent, it's now up to 1,000 feet. And I'll share with you kind of what that does in the rating. All the other criteria remained the same as well. So really what was looked at was just that siting criteria number 9, and then a re-ranking and reevaluation of those properties based upon this new scoring criteria was conducted. I'll share that with you here in just a little bit too. So here's what the site selection criteria originally for the Weebolt site looked like. If you look at the Weebolt site, that's the dark outline there of the parcel that looks kind of triangular. And if you do a GIS analysis of essentially all the properties that kind of touch it outside of right-of-ways, for example, you came up with something like 9 adjacent parcels, and it's pretty small for me on the screen. How many residential there does it say?
6.
6, okay, because I just can't quite read it here, and my notes are fairly small too. But if you look at the criteria that's been revised now with the 1,000-foot buffer, this is the impact analysis that essentially gets drawn. And so here you could see, and I want to say if I can read this right, with the 1,000-foot buffer, there's 68 residences that are impacted. Commissioner Carlson.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I just want to point out, I'm on the Design and Operations Committee, and I want to point out, I believe that the Joint Planning Board only uses a 350-foot buffer when they're using that for notification of anybody that's putting in for a conditional use permit or rezone applications, that they notify people within a 350-foot buffer. And so as a member of the Design and Operations Committee, we went well above and beyond what the Joint Planning Board would normally do. I just wanted to make sure we pointed that out.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlson. That is very true. The noticing requirement is 350 feet. Going 1,000 feet is considerably larger. And you can see the difference here just by going 1,000 feet or using adjacent properties as well. So we took that, and I'll back up just to the slide before it and show you that the original criteria talking about neighborhood impacts number 9 said, number of adjacent properties affected. You can see how low we are. We got a high number for affecting less than 5, a number 2 for affecting less than or between 5 and 10, a score of 1 if it affected between 10 and 15, a score of 0 if it was greater than 15. So if you go to the new criteria, you can see we've got much more properties being included in the scoring criteria. And of course, that's going to have a major impact on this particular criteria and how it rates all the projects against it, which you'll see in just a moment. So again, that's this is the numerical difference, but here's what the graphical difference looks like, as we just pointed out. I did want to point out a couple things because, the county was criticized for not being more considerate of neighborhood impacts. The United States Department of Justice, National Institute of Corrections guidance document, which was actually held up in our public hearing and referred to on more than one occasion. It's called the Jail Site Evaluation and Selection Guidance document, doesn't have any criteria for community or neighborhood impacts in it. Essentially, it is really just a functional criterion on how to select a jail. So even initially, although we've made improvements now, even initially, the county's criteria is much more sensitive, especially after this revision to community and neighborhood impacts. And in fact, we've looked at things like neighborhood impacts, just as I've described, but we've also looked at things like job impacts, because we don't want to have a reduction in jobs with the property that we identify. We've also looked at sales tax impacts because we don't want tax spreading, and the same issue for property tax exists. We don't want tax spreading on that either. So there is more of a community/neighborhood view that has been incorporated even inherently from the beginning that now we've improved upon than was required, or I shouldn't say required, but recommended in the NIC guidance. Okay, that being said, we were also asked to look at additional properties by the community. Several community members actually provided a map and said, hey, here's some additional sites you might want to look at. We looked at that map, and we also talked over a number of other sites that we wanted to take a closer look at, or that had been changed in status or whatnot between the time that we initially selected the property that we negotiated on. And these are the 4 new sites that the county staff are looking at. The new industrial park, sort of southeast of town. The Puello properties kind of down in that area as well. The Hanson property was one that was recommended also by the group of folks that spoke in the public hearing, a little bit north of town. And then Pinnacle Village, which is very south. I mean, it's like the edge of town south of us, was also looked at. So when we add those, well, before I get to that, I guess just remind everybody how we came up with these. You know, we had folks giving us properties from all sorts of sources. I mean, it came from city staff, it come from commissioners or county staff, steering committee members, design and operation committee members, realtors, community members. We also did a GIS analysis and the public hearing. I mean, that's how several of the sites, as I just mentioned, were identified as through the public hearing. So I think what's great is that, you know, that's why we have public hearings, is to listen. And that's, I think, what we did. So that being said, I'll take kind of a pause here and just kind of maybe more for the public. This is what the Greater Bemidji Area Joint Planning Board zoning ordinance allows for government buildings or public safety facilities, which we would interpret to include a jail. It was conditionally allowed, which is what the C is in all of those zones, including residential, and then permitted, meaning you didn't have to get a conditional use permit in all of the other zones to the right of that. The action that the planning board took on July 12th in special meeting essentially does this to their zoning ordinance. It essentially says that they will not accept rezones or CUPs for jails in the residential area for at least 6 months while they study the impacts of jails on potentially neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So they didn't outright say you can't put a jail there. They just said, we don't want you to put a jail there for 6 months or up to 6 months until we can study it. So the county board does have an option, and that is to kind of wait for them to study it and figure out if it's going to be allowed, and if so, what that might do to the project or its schedule, or continue to move forward by identifying other properties where it's been allowed to continue. Which is what staff has been doing to give you options. So just wanted to kind of give you a visual of kind of what all that looked like essentially. This is the revised site selection scoring and ranking criteria with the 4 additional properties I just mentioned, and including all of the additional disqualified properties that were zoned residential that we now, if we assume, are not going to pursue, kind of come off the list. And so if we take them off the list, we essentially have about 7 remaining sites to look at, and that's the order of the sites based upon the scoring that has been revised and with the addition of the 4 sites that we just talked about. So you can see number 1, the brick property, number 2, the industrial park, number 3, the Puello property, 4 is the old fairgrounds target site. Number 5 ends up being the Nymore Crown property, 6, the Hanson property, and 7, Pinnacle Village. And so that's just kind of how it shakes out essentially with that moratorium in place. Next, I just, again, for the community, wanted to remind folks about the sort of purchase and sale process here. Essentially, you know, property negotiations are conducted in closed session for a number of different reasons. Particularly, we don't want to have any interference during the property negotiation by outside influences, any pressures, any undermining, sabotaging, any of that sort of stuff. So as we had the first time, we will have these conversations in closed session about which property and what the property amount should be and what the negotiating terms should be and all that stuff in closed session. Once the county board agrees to the purchase and sale agreement, and then it has to come out into public session and get voted on, which is exactly what we did the last time we did this. So just a reminder, mostly for the public, about how the next step is going to go. I did include in here an activity timeline. This is a kind of very high level view. If we were to pursue other properties and not wait for this moratorium to sort of pass and work itself through, if we were to pursue other properties in, say, the commercial or industrial zoning or mixed use or that sort of stuff, this is what the timeline could look like. So essentially, you know, the local option sales tax legislative activities is the yellow there. Essentially, we've got a favorable decision by the legislature and are moving forward on that. Property acquisition, if we can find the right property and get an agreement in place, we're hopeful that that could happen in very early August. And if it does, it gives us a due diligence and feasibility time. Unfortunately, that will likely go beyond the local option sales tax vote, but possibly we could possibly close depending on what we find in the due diligence and feasibility study. We're not really sure how long that might take. But we would at least be able to have fairly good certainty on where that location would be. And then the design, the architects were selected. They're doing preliminary design. They're looking at a variety of different locations with us just for footprint sizing and stuff. But then we hope if we can make an offer and do due diligence, that design concepts will come out maybe as early September. So the public can see kind of, high level, kind of what it's going to look like, what the footprint is, that sort of thing. And then there's your cumulative anticipated spending allotments at the bottom based upon these activities and the timeframes in which they occur. So that's what I have for you this afternoon. I'll take any questions you might have. There is one request I would make, and that is if the county board does want to move to consider properties outside of residentially zoned properties and not wait for the moratorium, it would be best for you to make a motion and formally withdraw your offer on the purchase and sale agreement for the Weebolt property, because that is a contingency in the purchase and sale agreement. And since we can't, within the timeframes that were identified, get a rezone or CUP based on the actions of the Greater Joint Planning Board, it would make sense that unless you wanted to continue to pursue that property, if you had no intention of doing that, to probably just release the agreement. So that would be the other thing I would maybe make a recommendation for.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move that we withdraw our purchase agreement on the Weebo property based on that information. And that should then return the $10,000 earnest money. And at the same time, extend our authorization to the county administrator to pursue property within the industrial or business zones where a jail would be allowed per our original instructions to the county administrator, and then bring back hopefully a purchase agreement that we could either approve or not approve.
I would like to second that motion. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, so with that, and knowing that, the 7 properties that were presented tonight, how will that affect negotiations, with these property owners?
It probably will affect negotiations. I would say our history so far to date on the few properties that we've negotiated on, each of them have come in higher than market value is. And our goal is to just try to get that number as low as we can. Keep in mind that you do have an option available to you should you not be able to come to terms on price or other conditions. And that is to exercise your option of eminent domain and condemn a property for either market value or for other terms that you see fit. So that is a process. It takes some time to go through. It's typically not a fun process. There are ways to expedite certain aspects of the process as well. We would try to avoid that as much as we can. And so that would be something, though, that you would have the option of doing so that you weren't price gouged, as an example. That is why governments are given the option to exercise eminent domain for people who are either unwilling to sell or put crazy conditions on it, or want to sell at a huge premium, because it is in the public's interest. And this is a facility that serves the public's interest to have a reasonable purchase and sale agreement. And the statutes do require that in an eminent domain proceeding, market value is what's paid. So, that would be something we have to determine and then move through. So I think that's your protection ultimately, if we can't get to an agreement on another property.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Yes.
Just a quick question, Tom, do you know how much it would cost the county, from a legal standpoint to exercise eminent domain on a property that's, let's just say it's a $300,000 property?
The costs vary and it depends on how entrenched we get into it, like how much. I mean, if you have to hire an appraiser, for example, or if you can just take realtor market assessments and that sort of thing. Generally, I would say probably anywhere between maybe $25,000 and $50,000, possibly, maybe less, depending upon if you have really good market comps that you would need to do a full appraisal on. Our assessor has already been advised on some of these properties, and we feel like we have really great comps on some of the properties that the county would be interested in. So yeah, I think, the things you'd want to consider is the price it would cost to go through an eminent domain procedure, and then also the timeframes that would be involved. And there are ways that you can separate out the action so that you can quick take the property and then argue later in front of a judge what the market value should be. So you can acquire the property much more quickly, and then just come to terms on what that cost is later. Again, only being obligated to pay the market value for the property as well.
Any other questions? Yes.
Wait for the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to opioid settlement 10A. And this was to approve Tim Sumner to be on the committee, and also make sure that that committee is put on our list of per diems.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve the opioid settlement committee and leave it up to them to select up to 6 committee or community members to serve on it, for a total of up to 15 steering committee members, with Commissioner Sumner as the board appointee and any of us serving as alternates, and then to have that steering committee, the opioid settlement steering committee, be added to our per diem list so that Commissioner Sumner can get reimbursed for his time there.
all in favor, say aye. Oh, first of all, a discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. All right, 10B is the Prime West Community restructuring, reinvestment, I'm sorry. Okay. And there were 4 possibilities, or 1 to 3 we talked about. What is the wishes of the group?
Mr. Chair, I would like to get more information on what other options we would have for those funds, and just, I don't know that it's that we have enough information at this point to make a decision on it. So
Okay.
I would like to see us table it for a future meeting to have more information and more discussion about what the funds could be used for. I think we have a lot of challenges with the budget committee this year. I'm not on the budget committee, but I think that, is there a way that we could utilize some of that money to reduce the asks from that department?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd echo Commissioner Gosvig's comments. I feel that this was just kind of brought to us last minute without any board input or discussion, and I kind of want to get a better understanding of what Health and Human Services maybe wish list is, because I want to ensure that it's not that I don't trust Ann or the department and what they're doing. I just want to make sure that, we are doing what we can as a board to utilize, these reinvestment dollars in the best way possible. So that was one of my biggest concerns, approving this tonight. I believe the four options that were presented, are, good projects, but I just want to make sure that we're not leaving anything out that we could possibly maybe allocate, another, maybe a list of 5, I don't know. So it's, that's my thoughts tonight. Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Others? Yes, Joe?
I would be fine with approving the 4 requests that Ann brought forward tonight. Admittedly with some reluctance on the number 4, because I do feel like the housing company that has displaced folks, well, actually there's a lot of fingers to be pointed, but I would like to see the housing company pay for hotel costs and everything for the residents that are struggling right now before local community funds are spent. But it's a dire situation. So I can also be supportive of the number 4 request here. I think we do need to more staff, the better. And retaining staff, that's what 1 and 2 would do. And number 3, technology improvements. I trust that the time and thoughts have been well vetted. I trust Ann's request here, and so I would be fine with supporting each of the 4 proposals. So with that, I will make a motion to approve the 4 requests.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? All right, not hearing one, we will. Is there any other motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we just table this to a future meeting, possibly whether it's our August 1st meeting or whenever the information can be brought together to give us some more options, give us more information on it, and then we can put it on the agenda like we normally would have at that time for discussion. And
Is there a second? Second. All right, with that, is there a timeline that we have to, Tom, is there a timeline on this particular reinvestment? I know one of them is the end of August, but I'm not sure about this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been encouraged to submit our proposal to Prime West by the end of this month. However, they know that we're diligently working on it, and I believe are willing to grant us additional time. So if we can maybe schedule this for the August 1st meeting and come to terms at that point in time, I think we'd only be a day or 2 beyond their initially requested time frame, and I think we should be in good standing.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Yes, Tim? Are you waiting?
My concern with item 4 is, let's say that we did help with the cost, but how are we guaranteed that there's any opportunity for recoupment and things like that? So it's,
there isn't any.
yeah. Just, yeah. I want to help. Is there anything that we can do in the meantime to get by? I mean, Ann said, there's a week left in the funding, and then what? They're gonna get evicted from the hotel. I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that we can put pressure on somebody, because the pressure is on us to.
I like Joe's idea, BSU, they got the room for it, that, that'd be awesome if they would pony up to help the situation.
Well, again, my frustration with them, at first they said they could, and now they said that they can't. And so, it's an emergency situation. And so Pine Hall is sitting there vacant, not being used by students or summer camp folks. But again, I feel like somebody with the city dropped the ball here. I find it really interesting that the building inspector shuts the building down and then he resigns. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the city fired their city manager and so balls get dropped. And then they pawn it off for us to deal with. You know, I just see an opportunity for here for us to help the residents. Albeit, you know, the housing company should be fronting these costs right now and not jeopardizing their Section 8 qualification, but yeah, I guess it is what it is right now. But we do have an opportunity here to help out with this $48,000 request that was put forward by the HHS director.
All right, we've had discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Clarification
Yeah,
on
exactly.
All right, you want to clarify?
So the motion was to table it until our August 1st meeting
Right,
for us to get further information presented to us and to make a decision at that time, if what, if anything, we want to use that money for.
yes.
So, Mr. Chair, so I assume that we're gonna do our homework in the next couple of weeks and then maybe Ann will come back.
That's what I'm expecting Ann to come back with other, what else could this money be used for? And maybe in the meantime, Joe can work some magic with BSU and that to get them to actually revisit their idea of using Pine Hall for the Red Pine people.
Okay, and my question, I've dealt with some grants before, and sometimes if you do not make the timeline, you're out. So it's a lot of money that's coming in. And so you kind of double check that a bit, Tom. I don't mean to question, but
I'll ask our public health director to come up. She took some notes from Ann before she left for the day, and she can give you some additional details on that.
thank you.
So just to clarify, this isn't a grant. This is reinvestment dollars.
Right,
So the money is being allocated to the county. We just have to speak to how we're going to use it to support Prime West members, correct?
correct. Right.
And so Ann came with the 3 or 4 proposals. And the 4th one was looking at how we can support another entity. She did provide you with some other ideas that were presented. These were the top 4. Do you want me to read off that paragraph again of the other ideas that she had presented with?
I think she only presented us 4.
She did. And then
Yeah.
at the end, she talked about other areas that we had potential to serve. But these were the 4 when she looked at our greatest needs in the community where she thought they could be used. So we
Go
had
ahead,
other
go ahead and
options.
read that paragraph.
Okay. So the broader competitive grant process can be used by community agencies and other county departments such as jails possibly. HHS has distributed information about the availability of these grant dollars. Some ideas for its use are to support medical needs of the jail and the desperate need for home-based services in our community. Agencies and departments that provide these services have had the availability of these dollars made known to them, as well as broadly disseminating the information to the community. And so we just need to provide by July 31st, basically like a letter to Prime West saying this is how we plan on using these funds. And that's what our deadline is.
Okay, so how do we?
So,
how do
Mr.
we-
Chair, I'm a little bit confused because, Amy, you were talking about, in that paragraph, you were talking about the grant money. There's 2 separate pots of money. There's the reinvestment money, the $203,000, and then there's another potential for kind of unlimited. It's a competitive grant
So all
situation.
24 counties.
And
Right.
so Richard and I, well, Richard is actually the chair of the Prime West Board and I'm his alternate, but I go all the time. And so I think we have to make sure that we don't commingle those 2.
You're correct. You're
Right.
correct. I misunderstood and I read it again. I do know that in being part of those conversations, we had talked about other options as a leadership team. So I do know that I can speak to that, and that's where I misunderstood that she had tied that into that paragraph of the larger grant that we would have to apply for. So to answer your original question, the deadline for the reinvestment dollars is, a letter is due to Prime West by July 31st or July 30th.
So my question is, how do we get to that timeline with input from the board if
Well, our meeting is on August first and Administrator Barry said that he was pretty confident that there wasn't an issue with them, that they've already told us that we're getting the money. We're just needing to tell them where we're spending it or how we're spending it.
and since it's not a grant,
Right.
then
I
that,
don't
that
see why
money
it's
has
a
already
deadline.
been set as to Beltrami
Yeah.
County. Correct?
That's how I understand it, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
You know, and if
Right.
Prime West does have questions, you know, I mean, I think, you know, we do have 4 solid, you know, things, you know, but the board would like, you know, additional information, you know, so that's my thoughts. You know, it's not like we don't have a plan to spend it.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
we need more time because I think it was this last week, we were informed of this grant or this funding, you know, so I mean, like, how are we supposed to, you know, communicate all that within a week and, you know, it's just not enough time.
And Tom, we can put that on for August
First.
1st.
Yes, sir. I will schedule it for August 1st.
Okay. So clarify again.
We're just tabling it until August first.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so moved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to provide $48,400 to assist displaced residents of Red Pine Estates with reinvestment dollars. 70% plus of displaced residents are Prime West members. This would leave over $155,000 to still be up for other options, like was discussed a few minutes ago. Perhaps there's other ideas out there that this money could be used for, but perhaps we could at least use the $48,000 as proposed for the Red Pine folks.
Point of order.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, we've already moved to table the discussion of reinvestment money, so that motion would be out of order.
Yes, it would.
That's correct.
So now we've got the approval of the agreement for website redesign.
Okay, yep. Okay, approval to pay the commissioner, oh, nope, sorry about that, agreement for the website redesign. Joe, you had a question with that?
Yeah, so the cost seems kind of high, $34,000 plus another $6,000. Maybe I'm just not up to speed on the status of costs of websites these days, but if you could just speak to that a little bit, and then also the social media aspect. Does this proposal do anything related to the county's potential for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and that sort of thing? Do the two interact at all? And but I'll let you answer those two
Sure.
questions.
So, as far as the integration with Facebook, Twitter, all of those, that's yes, a part of it. Most every company, that's pretty much a standard given. You can link into whatever else you've got easily. The cost, actually, that one was the 4 that we ended up interviewing of the 22 that we got. Of the 4, this wasn't the most expensive one by any means. It was reasonable. I've never tried to price it before either before this, and through the course of the process, that was a very reasonable price, and it included some things even that a couple of the others didn't, like that redesign at the 4th year. They will redesign and update everything on the site as a part of that. Not all of them include that in their price either, which I thought was excellent.
Okay, very good. And then just one last question. As far as the commissioners section of the website, is there anything new, that's relevant for us as far as professional interaction with constituents, anything with the commissioner's webpage that would be new, updated, et cetera?
We haven't gotten that deep into it yet. Once we hire them, we'll be going through the entire thing page by page and getting input and feedback from all of the departments, from you guys for what's on yours. Best practice from their point of view on what other government websites look like. We've looked at some, we'll look at more and just go with what everybody likes and what's the standard.
Okay. Very good.
And is there,
Yeah.
excuse me, is there a timeline for this? I mean, is there a certain?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at that, but I was just wondering.
15 weeks, but then a lot of that will depend on how fast we get our work done on it as well, but
Okay,
that's if it all goes.
yeah, that's, I noticed that and I just thought if there's some other input, it might be good. So,
So,
all right, go ahead, Scott.
is there some other counties in the state of Minnesota that use them?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head if in Minnesota, I would have to look again. We looked at so many, I can't remember. which ones.
And then the final question would be, 15 weeks, where does that put us with regard to sales tax?
We don't spend
I didn't do the math. I didn't know if that would be an enhancement or a confusion of where people find information about the jail project.
Well, we can design all of the improvements and test fire the system and do all of that stuff and make sure it runs behind the scenes and not go live with it. So that way, it would be my recommendation that we just keep what we have currently, that people are kind of used to looking at, they know kind of where things are. The website address that we use currently is on our publications that we've been handing out for flyers and put on presentations and stuff. So my recommendation would be we just leave all of that for the next 3.5 months or so until we get past the local option sales tax. This work that Diane's referring to can happen in the behind the scenes with all that stuff. And then we'll just go live, maybe December 1st or December 15th or something like that, particularly when we think we're not going to have a whole lot of traffic on the website, and it allows us to kind of work bugs out and things like that too.
Tom, could we make sure that tonight's presentation update on the jail is on the website?
Yes, sir. We will make sure we do that. Mhm.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'm glad nobody commented about having to add hair to my picture on the website. Since you guys all- Figured I'd preempt you on that one, John.
Move to approve the request for the website redesign as presented.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And I'd like to thank Diane for your involvement with that and going beyond what we sometimes ask people. Thank you. Thank you, Diane.
She's done really great.
Okay, let me go back to. I think we're ready to move on to the legislative and lobbying issues. And we'll combine them with the commissioner's report. Craig?
Had our solid waste committee meeting this morning and we already reviewed a majority of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably good enough for me for tonight.
Okay, John?
That's only been a week. Or for me to report.
Tim?
How much time do I have?
He's been Mr. Chatty tonight.
Yeah, well, I've got a lengthy report, but I think the only thing that I'll report on tonight is, I will be missing the Black Duck ambulance meeting this coming Thursday, because I will be going to the Northwest, Juvenile Detention Center, board meeting and attending the afternoon festivities. So I'm not too sure if, Commissioner Gosvig got the message.
Yeah, Molly got a hold of me and I'll go to both meetings.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
And I think my management team meeting might have got rescheduled again. Maybe, I think.
I think what you,
Yeah, well, then I got a message from Commissioner Gould asking if I could switch my August 9th to October, so kick the can down the road a little longer. That's my report. Thank you.
Just, this will be real quick, I promise. Just a couple of BICAP committee meetings recently, interviewing potential new board members. We found some new board members, so we're getting to a full board again. And then we had our regular meeting down in Walker the last Thursday. And that's pretty much it for my report. But I know we talked about this at our last meeting, but I feel like it's important that we have an official motion. We talked about having the county attorney do an investigation on the closing of the Red Pine building. You know, there's a lot of misinformation going around out there. And I think we all agree that we need to get to the bottom of what happened and why. So, you know, with that, I would like to make an official motion that we direct the county attorney to look into the Red Pine situation relating to why addressing structural deficiencies were missed. I appreciate a second on that since we all agreed that's what we want to see happen anyway.
There's a second.
Mr. Chair, you know, I guess I need a point of order or clarification, you know, I mean, is that, it's just something that we can make a motion in a second? I mean, I know we're in regular session and whatnot, but you know, I believe we have agenda setting process when it comes to, you know, the last minute type of things.
Personally, I agree with that. I think we would run into some danger if we do some of these things without first going through the process of, this is definitely one of the items that we haven't really talked about, that we were going to have the attorney look into that.
But, and I'm not so sure that it's our
Attorney.
place. I'm not sure it's our place.
Well, the city kind of made it our place. They kind
But
of pawned it off. on us.
they can pawn up all they want, but if it's not our place, it's not our place. And I might ask our county attorney to come up and
Yeah.
maybe address that, please.
And whether it would be him that would be tasked with investigating it either, I don't know. You know, that it would be his department really that should have that added burden. He's busy as it is.
Well,
Sure.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have every capacity to do so. I mean, obviously I have a staff that's a little overburdened right now, but the expertise of my attorneys would be, I think, beneficial to investigate.
I wasn't speaking of that.
Yeah.
I was speaking of capacity.
Yeah.
Having a lot of other business.
It actually begs the question whether guys have the authority to ask me. I mean, you can always ask me, but to order me to do that, I don't know if you'd be able to. I have to do the civil work of the county. I don't know if it'd be not that I wouldn't do it. It's just, you gotta be careful what you ask versus order to do. But that aside, you sit as the Public Board of Health, and this could be a public health question. And so I think from a jurisdiction, I mean, I think you could, and I am just shooting from the hip here, guys. I haven't done any direct research on the issue yet, but I would think you'd have some sort of authority from oversight from the public. You'd weave it in through public health. You don't have zoning authority. That's the city. City has the zoning authority, the building permit authority, et cetera. They can conduct their own investigations and probably should, but you don't have any oversight to the city vis-a-vis their building requirements, their zoning requirements, et cetera. The only authority you would have would be through the Public Health Board. And, I think you could make an argument to do an investigation via the Public Health Board. I mean, you over there. The question
Yeah.
becomes, what is your authority? And I mean, I can look into that if you want me to, but it's you look into your authority, not look into an actual full-blown investigation, but, it's, you know, to me, it's probably, you know, perhaps something that is better left to either, you know, you risk, you know, relationships with the city if you push too hard on something like that. This is my, you know, it is their job to police their own buildings. So yeah, I'll take direction from you guys what you want me to do, but it's, you know, tread caution.
What, Attorney Hanson, what would your thought be on, is there any state agency that would be better suited to look into it?
I mean,
Minnesota Department of Health or the,
yeah, I mean, I just don't know if it rises to that level. I mean, again, cities and municipalities
Mhm.
have the ability to, you know, police their own zoning and their own building requirements. It is what it is. I mean, there's gonna be some, I mean, ultimately, you know, also, like the Bemidji Police Department could investigate if there's any, you know, criminal negligence or something like that. That would actually come from my office if it were. I don't know if there's any allegations of that, but I mean, like, that does happen sometimes when you have a building collapse or you know, structural deficiency. Does it rise to the level of gross negligence such that criminal liability attaches? But that'd be a police power issue, and you guys wouldn't have any authority on that, not even the sheriff, because it's in the city limits. So it'd be a city of Bemidji issue.
Mr. Chair. So Attorney Hanson, so you bring up, so how do we get to that point of knowing who investigates, who doesn't, you know?
And that's where again, sure, I can volunteer to kind of educate myself and then educate you. That's no problem.
Mr. Chair, you know, I want to follow up with Commissioner Gould. You know, I appreciate you your willingness to you know, want to try to get to the bottom of this and try to figure out, you know, a solution. Because I feel the same way. You know, I feel like something needs to be done, something should be done. And you know, I want to, you know, try to find you know, financial resources to help the folks and do everything that we can here at the county. It's just that sometimes government, you know, doesn't work as fast as we would like and hope. And you know, there's policies and procedures, you know, that I think we as a board, you know, should, you know, maintain and follow, you know, to avoid any repercussions, you know. So, you know, I want to help.
Mr. Chair, I'll withdraw my motion. I just, you know, we had talked about this at our last meeting on how we would like to see some kind of investigation take place in the near future and figure out, you know, where the ball was dropped. And, you know, I don't mean to make you do any more work than you're already doing. I know you're busy and all that, but I just was under the impression that, you know, it's kind of a county thing now since the city pawned it off, and that was why I suggested the county attorney looking.
And I think Commissioner Sumner wrapped it up pretty succinctly, and appreciate that comment.
I just want to make a clarification.
Yes,
It's not the county's problem. This is a city problem that they tried to make our problem. That doesn't make it our problem. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to help in some way, but if we do that, that also sets precedent. And how many times are you going to do that? Every time a city fails or a business fails or somebody fails and they come running to the county. And so I think we have to be very careful about precedent setting. And I also have to think we have to be very careful about how we speak about this. This is not the county's problem. This is the city's problem. And if they abdicate their problem, their situation. It's still not our problem.
Oh, I appreciate those words, Commissioner Carlson. My understanding coming into the meeting tonight was that this is now a county thing. I'm wrong on that.
We can have Tom maybe step in, but my understanding is that the county utilized resources that we didn't have to, but we did because nobody else was doing anything. And I think our staff went above and beyond the call of duty in what they did do, but that still doesn't make it our problem. And I don't, maybe Tom, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Carlson, that you said it well, and it's kind of like, we are in the social services business, and we try to do everything that we can within the resources and limitations and authorities that are granted to us. And this one just doesn't fit. There are some things that we can do and we have done. And we placed 6 staff for a very long time over at that facility to try to help them. Some of them are eligible through our programs, and through that eligibility, we're helping them find other locations and whatnot. But that's not true for all of the residents that are there. And I do believe that an after-action review of some kind is going to be important and critical for us to take a moment to learn about what happened and to identify ways that we can put things into place to prevent it from happening again. I think that after-action review is going to be stronger if we do it with partners, including the city and HRA, university, or others. But then it's going to be up to those partner agencies, particularly those who have responsibility or authority to actually take action. And that may be another limitation on our side, is not being able to ensure that those appropriate actions get taken for this situation to not occur in the future. But it is a sad situation, and we do wish that we could do more. But given the circumstances, those who are responsible are the ones that really need to step up and do more, instead of, as Commissioner Carlson said, pawning it off to other organizations or agencies or the government for that matter.
No, very good. I agreed. So
Perhaps I can suggest, and I'll work with Mr. Berry here. If not next meeting, the meeting after, in the work session, a topic of both maybe general board authority on investigations, et cetera, maybe not specific to this one, but just a refresher on your authorities. And then also maybe a refresher on Robert's rules, for what you can do, what motions you can bring and when you can bring them.
Okay. Is there a motion to? Oh,
Motion to adjourn?
yes. I thought you were jumping the gun here. So. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank